Have you ever had that feeling, like kind of nagging sense that maybe there's more to being truly well than just, what happens in a standard doctor's visit?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe you've thought about trying acupuncture for that nagging pain,
Hmm.
or wondered if your diet really affects your anxiety.
Hmm.
But then you feel a bit lost, right? So many choices out there beyond traditional medicine.
You're definitely not alone there. It's a very common feeling.
Yeah.
People want a more, well, personalized path to health,
Yeah.
something that covers all of who they are.
Exactly. And that curiosity is what we're digging into today.
Right.
Our deep dive is all about the fascinating world of integrative care.
Hmm.
We're pulling key insights from a really great chapter in Varkarola's Foundations of Psychiatric Mental Health Nursing.
Yeah, it's a chapter that really shines a light on this whole area. Our mission today is basically to demystify integrative care. Understand why it's gaining so much steam.
And crucially, the role nurses play, right? Guiding patients through all these different options.
Exactly. We'll look at natural products, maybe things you're already using, and powerful mind-body practices, even some pretty unique therapies too.
So we'll start by cutting through the jargon. What do these terms actually mean? Then we'll look at the evidence.
And think about what it all means for patient-centered care, especially in mental health.
Yeah. So you'll walk away with a clearer picture of the definitions, the trends, the nurse's role, and then we'll get into the specifics of different therapies.
Applications, safety concerns, really important stuff.
Definitely. Okay, let's peel back the layers. Where do we start?
Well, to really get a handle on this, we need some basic definitions first. The big umbrella term is complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM. That covers practices outside standard medical care.
Okay, CAM. Got it. So if you use something non-mainstream alongside your regular treatment,
That's complementary medicine. Think of it as an add-on.
like using acupuncture to help with chemo side effects,
Precisely. Now, if you use a non-mainstream approach instead of conventional care,
that's alternative medicine.
right, and that's a really important distinction because, well, sometimes choosing an alternative route might mean delaying or skipping necessary conventional treatments.
Good point. But there's another term you hear a lot, especially in nursing: integrative care.
Yes, and that's the one we often prefer. Integrative care means using non-mainstream approaches together with standard care, but in a coordinated, patient-focused way.
Combining the best of both worlds, sort of.
Exactly, and it really clicks with nursing values, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Putting the patient first, focusing on prevention, wellness, the whole person, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
It sounds like a different philosophy almost.
It really is. Integrative care often starts from this belief that the body has this amazing ability to heal itself if you give it the right tools and support. It's more proactive.
Compared to conventional Western medicine, which can sometimes feel more reactive, like fixing problems after they start.
Right. Often disease-focused. And this different approach is catching on. You mentioned people feeling lost. Well, they're also actively seeking these things out.
The numbers are pretty staggering, aren't they? Up to 40% of patients in the U.S. using non-traditional approaches.
Yeah, it's significant. And there are lots of reasons why.
Like what? What's driving this?
Well, partly, patients want to be more involved in their own health care, not just passive recipients.
Makes sense. Taking control.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes these approaches just feel less risky than medications, or maybe they've had a really good experience with a holistic practitioner who, spends more time with them, listens differently.
I've definitely heard people say that, feeling rushed in conventional settings.
Exactly. So they look elsewhere, especially for things like chronic pain or anxiety, depression, where maybe conventional treatments haven't fully worked.
Or it could be a provider recommendation or even cost, right?
Sure. Or just wanting general wellness, more energy, better immune function. It's a whole mix of motivations.
And this shift really changes the game for nurses.
Absolutely. The ANA and the American Holistic Nurses Association, they recognize holistic nursing as a specialty. The goal is literally healing the whole person.
So a holistic assessment isn't just about the physical stuff.
Not at all. You need to ask those open-ended questions about nutrition, exercise, relationships, work stress, cultural beliefs, spiritual concerns.
And crucially, asking about herbal supplements, because people often don't mention them unless you ask directly.
That's a huge one. You'd be surprised. So nurses really need a basic understanding of these integrative options, especially now with so much health info online.
Which can be really unreliable, right? You said up to half might be inaccurate.
Scary, isn't it? So nurses are vital in guiding patients towards trustworthy, evidence-based resources.
Like the NCCIH, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health.
Exactly. That's part of the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. They're working hard to bring rigorous science to this field.
So funding research, looking at what works for symptoms like pain or anxiety, promoting health.
And also helping to professionalize these approaches, creating clear pathways and disseminating reliable information.
You see that professionalization happening with more graduate programs and certifications too, like the HNBC for holistic nursing.
Yes, those credentials signal specialized knowledge and a real commitment to that whole person approach.
Okay, this brings us to a tricky area, a bit of a debate. Should insurance cover integrative treatments?
Yes. The million-dollar question, almost literally.
So, on one side, people argue coverage would make these therapies more accessible, take the financial burden off patients. Kind of aligns with the idea of comprehensive insurance, like with the ACA.
True. But then the other side worries that insurance involvement might actually lead to more rules and restrictions.
How so?
Well, providers might have to meet strict criteria, which could limit the types of services offered or how much is covered. Some insurers do cover things like chiropractic or acupuncture now.
But it's often limited, right? Lower reimbursement.
Often, yes. So there's this tension between making it affordable and potentially limiting the practice itself. It's complex.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, so we've got the definitions, the trends, the nurse's role, the policy stuff. Let's dive into the actual therapies.
Right. We can group them into roughly 3 buckets: natural products, mind and body approaches, and then other diverse therapies.
Let's start with natural products, things we take, basically.
Yep. Herbal medicines or botanicals, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, their use has just exploded. You can find them everywhere.
Okay, but safety first. This is crucial. We know prescription drugs have risks, but what's the big concern with supplements and herbs?
The main issue is the lack of effective regulation. Just because it says natural on the bottle doesn't automatically mean it's safe, or even that it is what it says it is.
Wow. Like that DNA barcoding study you mentioned.
Exactly. They tested 44 popular herbal products, found a third of them were contaminated or substituted with completely different plants or just fillers.
A third. That's shocking. So it might not work, or worse, it could be harmful?
Precisely. It raises serious safety flags, especially because people often assume natural equals pure or harmless.
So even something that sounds okay could interact badly with prescriptions, like St. John's wort.
Perfect example. Used for depression, but it can cause serious problems like serotonin syndrome if you mix it with certain antidepressants or even some migraine meds. Plus, it can mess with the effectiveness of things like birth control pills or HIV drugs.
Okay, wow. And kava, used for anxiety.
Linked to severe liver damage. Big FDA warning on that one.
Melatonin for sleep.
Generally, okay, short-term, but there are questions about long-term use and how it affects your body's own production.
And fish oil. Omega-3s are super popular.
#1 natural product used, actually. But again, caution if you have fish or shellfish allergies, and it can increase bleeding time. So the takeaway for you as a nurse,
Ask about everything the patient is taking, prescription or not.
absolutely critical. And it's not just about supplements. Diet and nutrition are hugely connected to mental health.
Right. You often see nutritional issues alongside psychiatric conditions, like vitamin deficiencies or problems like obesity or diabetes.
And this whole field of nutritional psychiatry is booming. Researchers are finding connections between specific nutrients, eating patterns, even our gut bacteria, the microbiome, and conditions like depression, anxiety, even schizophrenia.
So like the standard Western diet, high fat, refined carbs, sugar, that's actually linked to changes in the brain associated with depression.
There's compelling research showing that link, yeah.
Yeah.
Smaller hippocampal volume, for instance. But conversely, diets rich in fish, fruits, vegetables seem protective. It really challenges that old idea that mental health is purely brain chemicals, separate from the body.
What about specific nutrients? Vitamin D.
Showing promise for improving depression scores. But, and this is a big safety point, you can overdose on oral vitamin D supplements because it's fat soluble.
So it builds up. What does that look like?
Can cause hypercalcemia, too much calcium, symptoms like feeling really unwell, fatigue, excessive thirst, urination changes, GI upset, even confusion. So sunlight is good, supplements need caution.
Got it. Omega-3s again, you mentioned those.
Yep, good evidence for helping with depression and bipolar disorder.
And the microbiome, the gut bacteria.
Fascinating area. We have trillions of microbes in our gut, and we're learning they have a massive impact on mental health, especially depression and anxiety. There's real hope for using nutrition, probiotics, fermented foods to help heal the gut and, in turn, the mind.
That mind-body connection is so powerful, isn't it? Which brings us nicely to the next category, mind and body approaches.
Exactly. These therapies leverage that constant two-way communication between our thoughts, emotions, and our physical health. Many are pretty mainstream now, actually.
Like CBT, relaxation techniques.
Guided imagery, meditation, mindfulness, these are really popular for stress reduction, wellness, things like focusing on your breath or more structured programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction.
And there's good evidence they help with depression, anxiety, chronic pain.
Strong evidence, yes, and they help build resilience overall.
What about yoga?
Yoga combines the physical postures with meditation and breathing. It seems to help depression, anxiety, pain too. The thinking is it boosts helpful brain chemicals like dopamine and GABA and helps stabilize the stress response system, the HPA axis.
And exercise. We talked about diet, but movement is key too, right?
Yeah.
Especially when people with psychiatric conditions might struggle with low energy or motivation.
Oh, exercise is like a natural pharmacy.
Yeah.
It literally changes brain chemistry, boosting serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, BDNF, which helps brain cells grow, increases blood flow to the brain, improves cognitive function.
The benefits are huge across the board.
Absolutely. Substance use disorders helps with staying abstinent, reduces withdrawal, depression, anxiety. Schizophrenia helps manage weight gain from meds, improves symptoms, might even slow neurodegeneration. ADHD in kids, anxiety reduction in general. It's incredibly powerful.
Okay, what about acupuncture? How does that fit in?
So acupuncture involves placing very fine needles at specific points, meridians, to affect the flow of ki or life energy. Patients often feel warmth or tingling.
And it has actual physiological effects.
Oh, yes. It impacts the cardiovascular system, endocrine, neurological, immune systems. It's used a lot for pain, but also things like substance withdrawal and emotional issues.
And guided imagery, using the mind's eye.
It's a fantastic tool. Nurses have used it for ages. Great for anxiety, pain, helping people cope with trauma like PTSD, often used with CBT for veterans, for example. Imagining yourself strong, finding meaning. It helps build coping skills before procedures too, or minimizes side effects from meds. Now let's shift gears slightly to manipulative practices and some other diverse therapies.
Manipulative, like chiropractic.
Exactly. Spinal manipulation is the most common example. The core idea is the link between the body's structure, mainly the spine, and its function. Theory being that energy flows from the brain down the spinal cord, and misalignments can block that.
People mostly go for back pain, right?
That's the main reason, yeah. But chiropractors also treat general pain, headaches, allergies, asthma, and interestingly, there's exploration into its use for depression and anxiety too.
And massage therapy.
Involves different techniques, gliding, kneading, vibration, promotes relaxation, improves circulation. You've got Swedish massage for general stress relief. Japanese shiatsu works more on acupressure points. Good evidence for helping with depression and stress, even during pregnancy.
Okay, moving on. Homeopathy and naturopathy. They sound similar but are different.
They are distinct. Homeopathy follows the law of similars, like cures like, uses tiny, highly diluted doses of substances that would cause symptoms in a healthy person. You can buy remedies over the counter, but seeing a practitioner is usually best. Its use in mental health is mostly limited, perhaps some anxiety disorders.
And naturopathy.
That's a much broader system focused on health restoration. A naturopath might use nutrition, herbs, homeopathy, hydrotherapy, light therapy, counseling, all based on the idea that the individual has a key role in their own recovery.
Gotcha. What about aromatherapy, using essential oils?
Very popular. Oils from plants are used for well-being, healing. You can inhale them, apply them diluted on the skin, use a diffuser. The sense of smell connects directly to parts of the brain controlling emotions and the autonomic nervous system.
So they can be calming, stimulating, pain-reducing.
That's the idea. There's anecdotal evidence and some studies suggesting benefits for depression, anxiety, stress, particularly in older adults.
But safety is key here too, right? Even though they're natural oils.
Absolutely critical. These are concentrated substances. Never take them by mouth. Avoid eyes. Keep away from flames. Children generally not for kids under 2. Store them properly. Some cause sun sensitivity. Always do a skin patch test first, especially if someone has allergies or lung issues.
Good reminders. Any common ones for mental health?
Roman chamomile is often used for anxiety, lavender for calming, clary sage for relaxation. There are many others.
And expressive therapies, art, music.
Increasingly used in psych settings, from inpatient units to outpatient clinics. Really powerful for recovery. Always led by trained, certified therapists, of course.
Makes sense. Then there are energy therapies. Sounds a bit different.
Yeah, these are based on the idea of non-physical bioenergy fields. Therapeutic touch is one, developed by a nurse. The practitioner uses their hands near the body without touching to assess and balance the energy field. Used for pain, PMS, depression, wound healing.
Without touching. Interesting. And healing touch.
Also nurse developed. Similar focus on energy balance for well-being might involve gentle touch or hands hovering over the body.
And Reiki. I've heard of that one.
It's a Japanese spiritual practice. The idea is channeling universal life energy to the recipient. It's becoming quite popular, even offered in some hospitals and hospices. Studies show it can help with pain and anxiety.
Okay, couple more categories. Bioelectromagnetic therapies.
This involves using electromagnetic fields in unconventional ways. But some are FDA approved now for depression, like TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and VNS vagus nerve stimulation. They use targeted energy pulses.
And bright light therapy. Not just for winter blues.
Not just for seasonal affective disorder, no. It's also effective for non-seasonal depression. One study actually found it worked better than fluoxetine alone for major depression. Pretty significant.
Wow. And finally, prayer and spirituality.
We can't overlook this. So many patients, especially in mental health, have deep spiritual needs, dealing with anger, grief, forgiveness, finding strength. Think about 12-step programs. Spirituality is often central. The power of belief is undeniable.
It's also really important to think about culture, isn't it? How different groups approach health.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Amish community relying on natural treatments. That cultural context shapes their choices, sometimes leading them to stop prescribed meds. It just highlights why nurses must do a thorough, culturally sensitive assessment to understand the patient's whole perspective.
Understanding the roots of some of these therapies helps too, right? Like traditional Chinese medicine.
Definitely. TCM is the framework for acupuncture, Tai Chi, Qigong. It's rooted in Taoism, emphasizes harmony. Health is the smooth flow of Qi, or life energy. Illness is a disruption. Diagnosis involves careful observation, questioning. The goal is restoring harmony, reconnecting with meaning.
And Ayurvedic medicine from India.
One of the oldest systems, meaning science of life, views us as made of 5 elements. Health is the balance of vital energies called doshas. Treatment involves personalized diet, herbs, yoga, meditation, massage, focusing on balance.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. So bringing it all together, what are the key takeaways for, our future mental health nurses listening?
I think the core message is that this philosophy of holism, of building strong therapeutic relationships, that's central to psychiatric nursing, no matter what treatments are used, conventional, integrative, or both.
Meeting the patient where they are.
Exactly. And knowing that patients are exploring these therapies. Nurses need to be ready to guide them to reliable information, like from the NCCIH. Your knowledge of the research is crucial for promoting safe, effective, holistic care.
So here's something to think about as you move forward in your own nursing journey. How might truly embracing a patient's full set of health beliefs, including their interest in integrative care, how might that not just give you more tools, but actually deepen the trust you build?
And enhance their healing in ways maybe conventional medicine alone can't quite reach.
Yeah, something profound to consider.
Remember, you're not just building knowledge here, you're building empathy. And that's what makes all the difference in mental health care. Keep learning, keep exploring. You're going to do great things.